We're going to talk about resumes and cover letters, and we're going to cover a ton of information very quickly. I believe that the slides, or most of the slides, that you will have access to on Learning Suite. So that's a great way to go there. In fact, there are almost 100 slides on the Learning Suite set. We're not going to go through all 100, so just understand that. When I talk about world-class resumes, world-class cover letters, I want to talk about what the intent of a resume is. This is an advertisement. You're going to market yourself to some organization that's going to buy you. I'm sorry to call you a product, but they're going to buy your talent, your skills, and your abilities. So in order to do that, in order to have a great ad, it has to be effective. I want to give you a quick example of an effective ad and let you just enjoy this for a second. Whoops. Sorry, guys. We're going to escape because we picked up the wrong one. We'll get the right one now. There we go. This is the one we want to replace. So again, effective. Okay, for those of you familiar with that automobile, it is a Bugatti Vitesse. I believe Vitesse is French for speed. 1,200 horsepower, 260 plus miles per hour at top speed. Exciting automobile. Now you wonder, why am I talking about this? By the way, it goes 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, 0 to 100 in 5.5 seconds, and 0 to 200 in 18 seconds. It's an accelerating machine. It's not cheap. An oil change is $25,000. Tires are $20,000 each. And every 3 tire changes, you have to change the wheels, and the set of wheels is $65,000. The going price right now on a Vitesse is $2.4 million for the base model. Now, if you want to customize it, you can put it up to $30 million. And they have built some $30 million Vitesses. Now, why do I tell you that, and why do I show you that commercial? Because Bugatti has a targeted audience that they seek. Not all of us have $2.4 million spare change to go buy a car. And in fact, your accountant or your finance professors would love it if you would all, offer them a car after you're out there successful. So that's what we're all about. But the idea behind a commercial is it needs to be targeted. It needs to focus. on a target that you want to reach. And the bullseye of that target is, of course, the job. So you're headed for that specific job that you're looking for. But to get to the bullseye, you have a set of skills that you're developing. That's why you're in school. I'm assuming that you come to school because you're looking to develop a set of skills that you can sell for that job. Now, many of you have some current skills, and that, when you add those two, the developing skills and the current skills together, you get closer to the target of that bullseye, or that bullseye. And then finally, what the employer is looking for is, what do you have that matches the job that I want? And that gets us to the bullseye of the target. So when you look at your resume, I want you to target your resume. Well, let me tell you some things that a resume is not. A resume is not an autobiography. I don't care if I'm an employer about everything about you. I want to know what's relevant. And so I'm always looking for things that are outside of the list of everything you've ever done. I'm looking for relevance, not irrelevance. So don't use your resume to tell me things that are not important to me, the reader of that resume. It isn't designed to be read. A resume is designed to be scanned, to be quickly looked at, and to point me directly and quickly to the places that tell me the things that I'm looking for that you have. Finally, it is not a place to make mistakes. Sometimes, and every year, I get students who come and prepare a resume, and they say, oh, I was up against the deadline, I had all this homework, and so I misspelled something. I could have said that better. Folks, this is your advertisement. Think about the advertising world. When a major company makes a mistake in an advertisement, they're accountable for that. If it says that a product is supposed to do a certain thing and that was a mistake, it really doesn't do that certain thing, they can be sued. Now, you're not going to be sued by an employer who looks at your resume and says, this doesn't look accurate. You're just going to be ignored. So understand that poor grammar, poor rambling prose, the things that are mistakes, they don't have a place in your advertisement. We want your advertisement to sell you as well as Bugatti's advertisement sells the Bugatti. So what is a resume? A resume is proof that you can do the job. I'm going to present to you the idea that I think that recruiters only have to ask 3 questions. And if you can answer these 3 questions, you're going to be a pretty good candidate for the job. And the first question is, can you do the job? And so what we want to have is on your resume some proof that you can do the job. Now, it's evidence that you know that you will love the work. And that's the second question that you have to answer for the employer. And that is, will you love this work? So I want evidence in your resume that you will love this work. Now, some other things that are important in the resume world are the skills that you bring, the value proposition. And as finance students, you understand value propositions. You need to present in your resume your value proposition to that employer. Now, most resumes have a chronology, and especially in college student resumes, you have a choice. You could do a functional resume, or you could do a reverse chronological resume. We found that for most college resume readers, they're looking for the chronology. They want to see the dates when things happen. So I would use the chronological resume, but maybe with some functionality mixed in. And we'll talk about that. Finally, this is a demonstration of your fit with that employer's culture. And you need to know that employer's culture. You need to have done your homework. And that's the third question that if you can answer, you will be a great fit for an employer. And the third question is, can we tolerate you in this job? And so it's, will you fit us? So if you answer those 3 questions, yes, yes, and yes, we'd love to have you here, you're probably on your way towards a possible offer. I'm going to also present the idea that a resume is a cheat sheet. The only place at BYU that you have permission to produce a cheat sheet. And that is, you can load into your resume questions that you want them to ask you about. And so you use the resume to plant some ideas for that employer that they can ask you about an experience. And again, we'll get into the detail, but it's a cheat sheet for your interview. All right, the secret that we found, and it's turning more and more, I spent the summer visiting companies, and we were in New York City with Kim for a reception, and we just met with a number of firms on Wall Street, and over and over and over again, what we heard from them is, we want skills. We want to know the students' skills. We don't want to know the list of classes. We want to know what they learned. So what are the current skills? What are the developing skills that you're working on? And what are the skills that you have that match our job requirements? So you want to tell me about those skills and use that resume to build that skill process. I'm going to quickly go over, this is just something that we were asked to include by the Dean's Office, and I think it's smart. In a book by Jim Bright and Joanne Earl, they made this statement that resumes are first dates in the employment process. And since you're college students, you've probably been dating recently, and you know that if you have a lousy first date, the chance of getting a second date is probably pretty poor. So using that analogy, we just decided to bring it on. So your resume is what I would call the equivalent of the first date. The interview is like your second date. So now you made the second date and you know, you're successful, they liked you in the interview, so then they do something that is the equivalent of an office visit. They invite you to the DTR. So the office visit's when you go and you really go into depth with those recruiters. Finally, you get an offer. And in the dating analogy, that's kind of like the proposal. So you're proposing to get engaged. And when you accept the offer, you're engaged. Guys, understand this. Employers look fairly closely at the recruiting process in an equivalency of the dating process. When you break an engagement, it hurts. Any of you who have been through that experience, it's not a fun thing. And employers, when you you accept an offer and you're engaged, and then you turn down that accepted offer, it's almost as emotional as an engagement breakup. Don't do that to yourselves. Don't accept an offer if you don't really have the intent to stop recruiting. So just be aware of that. We get calls, the Dean's Office gets calls from employers who have been turned down, and they say, see, that's a BYU student, I'm not going to ever recruit at BYU again because they didn't live up to their honor. So okay, enough on that. Let's talk quickly about cover letters. Cover letters are not required in many recruiting circumstances, but they're useful to introduce you. They're useful to dress up your resume. Your resume is an outline of the things that you've done, your skills. Now you can invite them to look a little closer to that resume with a cover letter and giving them some information. They introduce you to the reader. They express actually your personal interests in a better way than a generic objective on the top of your resume. You're going to learn that I'm not a big fan of objective statements because they are very generic. The other thing that they do, and this is especially true with the consulting organizations, is they demonstrate your communication skills. It's very important. They read that letter, and some of them will say, oh yeah, we'd like a cover letter. You can 10-page cover letter. If they see something that's poor communication in that 10 pages, you're done. Because they've looked at that cover letter just like they looked at the resume advertisement and said, this tells us this is not a good candidate, or, wow, look at the communications abilities of this person. We've got to talk to him or her. All right, here are the top 5 things that came from a survey by the National Association of Colleges and Employers. Readability, so make it readable. Make it so that I can see. It doesn't have to be the first paragraph. Actually, it's one sentence, but it's 250 plus words long. Remember A Tale of Two Cities? It was the best of times, the worst of times. It went on 250 words in one line, one paragraph. You don't do that in your resume. It's readable. It gives me a sense of your personality, shows me how you found the job, and gives me something eye-catching. Well, so here's an example. This is a cover letter. Now it's dated a little earlier this week because I'm doing another presentation. But a cover letter, a good cover letter has some things. It gives me your contact information. It does date. It has a date, so I know how old this is that you wrote to me. It gives me, it shows me that you know who I am. So I'm Joe Recruiter. So address it to someone. It's always best to address it to a person. If you can find out the name of the person, of the individual, you can write to whom it may concern, but that gives me as a recruiter an invitation to throw it away because you didn't do your homework and find out who it was you should write to. Now, in really rare circumstances, you could write it to the office managing partner, to the president of the company, but just be aware that if you do that, they're going to say, wait a minute, you could have found out who the recruiter was online. Got some feedback actually from Goldman Sachs when one of our students wrote to the CEO because they didn't know who to write to, and the recruiter came back and said that we turned that one down because they could have easily found out who the BYU recruiter was. All they had to do was go to Kim Smith's office. So that told them something about that. Okay. Do address it again to a person. Use a formal. If you're not familiar with the person, if they've given you permission, tell them that. Again, introduce yourself and make it easy on the recruiter if you're writing to a recruiter and tell them what job you're writing about. So put that referral in there. And then this is what you offer me. This is not your resume. It's not a repeat of your resume, but it is somewhat of a repeat of the job description. So somewhere in the job description, I'm guessing they talked about teamwork. They talked about solving complex problems. And they talked about critical thinking. And here you're planting the seeds and inviting them to go into your resume and set it up. And then finally what we do is, what's next? And I just put this line in, I'm in class Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That tells me not to call during that time. When I was a recruiter, I would call probably 2 times, maybe a 3rd time if I was really interested in the candidate. But if I didn't hear back from that candidate, I assumed that they were no longer interested in me. But if I called every day at 11 o'clock and the student was in class every day at 11 o'clock, I didn't know that. So it might be helpful to tell them when you're available. And that's a nice plant in the cover letter to make that known. And by the way, if you tell them you'll get back to them as quickly as possible, don't let 24 hours go by if you receive a phone call. And another hint, I don't know how many of you, I had some roommates who put really strange things on their voicemails. One of them, he just thought it was funny, and he had, this city dump, leave a message. Well, the recruiter calls and they think they got city dump. So, don't do that to yourself. Professional message. Hi, this is Bill Brady. I'm interested in returning your phone call. Please leave a message and a phone number and I'll get back to you. And then call them right back. So those are important things. And then down here is a sincerely your name. I'm a great student. Okay, now you can do this also in an email cover letter. And email cover letters are perfectly acceptable. So same idea, put the information, make it almost as formal as a written cover letter. Generally what we don't see or what recruiters don't like to see is an email that has a cover letter attachment and a resume attachment. They don't mind having you write a cover letter that is the email and attaching the resume. So that's just some other information to know. I wanted to put this up. This is last year. A student wrote this email to the recruiter. And it's important, I wanted to show it to you because this went viral. It was sent out from recruiters in the investment banking world. And within a week, it had 750,000 hits. So It's a big deal. It can go viral, and it was kind of a frank, maybe a little bit rude in some ways, but it was clearly a cover letter that had meaning. Don't make them generic. If you go to coverletters.com and take cover letter number 21, I know recruiters who say, oh, that's cover letter number 21 from coverletters.com. They've seen it 1,000 times. So be personal, use the cover letter to introduce you and to specifically talk about your abilities and skills. All right, winning cover letter keys, keep it short, state the position, explain why you want the job, clearly describe ways that you can contribute, supplement, don't repeat the resume, keep the tone and the content very professional because you are being hired as professionals, so now's the time to do that. All right? Give them a chance to know that you'll be calling them back, that you'll be returning their calls, whatever it is. And then, again, no mistakes. This has got to be as good as that resume in terms of its perfection. You make the cover letter tempting. The idea is to give them a little dessert before dinner or a really good hors d'oeuvre. And again, avoid the canned letters. They just smell, and inevitably that happens. By the way, if you're going to write the same cover letter and just change the name of the recipient, be really careful about that. In the School of Accountancy, every year I get 2 or 3 students who send a letter to all 4 of the big 4 firms. So addressed to Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. And inevitably, somebody writes the letter and it's addressed to the Deloitte recruiter, and in the body of the letter it says, I'm really looking forward to meeting with KPMG. That's a quick way to get nixed. Don't do that. Read, pay attention. All right, let's talk about resumes. Resume writing is probably an art, not a science. And the reason I say this is you probably have asked many people about ideas for your resume. And every person that you ask is going to give you a different opinion. They're going to emphasize different things, and there are going to be mothers who will tell you one thing, there will be fathers who will tell you another thing, there will be career services people who will say, well, you really should do this. There are going to be MCOM professors who say, no, it should be written this way. What you want to do is really concentrate on what you are going to, where you're going to apply, and what is the advice that comes from the source. So if I were going to ask whether or not a certain resume was appropriate for an investment banking job, I would go to Kim Smith. And I would say, Kim, does this match? Because he's the pro who knows. Use your sources carefully, and your roommate may say, well, I really like this, and I saw this, and I liked it. But if it isn't what Kim says an investment banking cover letter should look like, then don't send your roommate's letter. He's not the expert. So just be aware of that. We have many experts in the Career Center and in the university who can help you. And again, pay attention to your source. All right, I'm going to go through a whole series of factors that I think are important. I'm not going to tell you how to format your letter. I'm not going to tell you what language to put in your letter or in your resume. What I want to do is to talk about things that need to be there to make it outstanding. The first recommendation is that you provide a wow factor. When I'm reading resumes, I want to see results. I want you to focus on those results. I want you to show me what you have. And especially show me the things that you have that are related to my work. Because remember, the reader is trying to decide, will I buy you? And are you my Bugatti? And so focus on the things that they need. And results are much better proof than responsibilities. So if you say, I was responsible for, I can say, great, you were responsible for it. Did you do it? And results prove to me that you did it. Use numbers. We're in the business world. We're in the finance world. They appreciate that. I need you to demonstrate that you have things that everybody else who had that same set of responsibilities didn't do. So if you tell me I was responsible for scooping ice cream, I say, was your buddy who was next to you. Everybody who scoops ice cream at Creamery on 9th does the same thing, and their responsibilities are the same. So how were you different? What set you apart from the person who was next to you? The other thing that I'm looking for is that you have passion, that you have a drive that will bring me customers and results and satisfaction for the things that I want you to do as an employee. So when you write your resume, show me those things. Make those parts of what you're there. Again, no responsibility. Sorry. We're not going to do that. Here's a practice exercise, and it goes back to that. If I say I scooped ice cream, you're going to get a C grade in my resume writing class. You may even get an E because it's in first person. We assume your resume is yours, and you don't need the I's in a resume. Now, to get a B, you have to tell me a little bit more. So this is the B version of that. To get an A, I need more information to tell me how you did it and to demonstrate some things. Now that A version, you see, we went from served ice cream to increased shift revenue. Ooh, okay. How did you do that? You're an ice cream scooper. What happened? And, well, by upselling product. I didn't sell ice cream cones, I sold sundaes. I sold banana splits. I made people make a decision to spend more money on their visit. I gained a loyal group of customers who kept coming back every week, every day. They would be here at 5 o'clock and they wanted me to scoop ice cream for them. So all of these things are important in terms of showing and demonstrating to me, the reader, that you have skills. Let's talk about those skills. So here's the ACE version. And what are the skills? So increase shift revenue 25% by upselling products. What's the skill? Somebody quick. Okay, you know what sales and you know what revenue means. Shifted the register positions and decreased customer wait time. Wow, that's a big deal. Okay, what's the skill? Critical thinking. I looked at the situation, I said, we could do this better. And I looked outside of the box and said, all we had to do was shift the register at the end, and then the scoopers are out in the middle and they don't have an interruption and have to go around each other. And then finally, you achieve the highest loyalty return rate. What's the skill? Customer relations. I know how to help people get what they want. And so again, demonstrate the skills, show the skills, give me things that talk about skills in your resume. What are the top skills that are looked for right now? This is a study that came out last year from DeVry University. They want strong work ethic, they want motivated, high degree of initiative, ability to work well with others, great time management skills, and finally accountability. Sorry, I'm an accounting person, but we think accountability is significant. Here's a quote from the director of platform evangelism at Microsoft. And it's true about many of you. You do already have the skills, and what you need to do is bring them to the forefront. Point them out to me. Show me the skills that you have so that I can then interview you and give you the job. Show it to me on your resume. All right, here's just a brief skills thought. At the entry level, this is a list of skills that DeVry decided were important. When you're applying for entry-level jobs, these are the skills that they are looking to see if you might have. Now, if you take a step up and you're now ready to talk about mid-level, the skills change slightly. And then ultimately, when you're applying for that manager level position, and some of you do have enough experience that you may be applying for manager level positions, then talk about the skill sets that are listed there. Again, you will all have these slides on your learning suite, so we won't spend much time there. Again, rule is Give me a wow factor, provide me enough detail. I scooped ice cream isn't enough, but you saw the A version. I just don't want you to language bloat, and that's where we talked about A Tale of Two Cities. Rule number 2, remember the reader. When I was at Bechtel doing recruiting and leading a recruiting team, I had 8 recruiters who worked for me, and they looked at roughly 40,000 resumes a year. I just heard something recently that Google is getting about 40,000 resumes a day. So applying for a Google job, just understand that. It's amazing. The other thing that we just heard today was that Amazon is now creating 2 gigabytes of data a minute. So much for statistics. When I was at Bechtel, we had, if I took those 8 recruiters and divided the 40,000 resumes, they had to do a lot more than just read resumes. And if they took half an hour on every resume, they would end up burning up 5,000 hours a year. And there's only 2,080 hours in a normal work year of 40-hour work weeks. So you need to understand that they didn't have time to read every resume. So what did they do? They scanned. And they scanned very quickly. What I want you to do is to take your resume to a friend and say to your friend, and maybe not your best friend, they know you too well, but to your friend and you say, would you read this? And you time them. You give them 15, 20 seconds. And when the 20 seconds is up, you take the resume back and you say, okay, what did you learn about me from that resume scan? And if they didn't get to the things that you needed them to get to in that 20 seconds, then you want to rewrite the resume, because you want the reader in 20 seconds to see the highlights that you bring forward. So again, try the friend test, it might work well. This is an interesting display that we got. This is a scan of where recruiters went. They had about 3,000 recruiters who read this. And they tracked their eye tracking. And where the bright red is, that's where the eye spent the most time as that person was scanning this resume. Now, it's an experienced person's resume, but still, notice how much time they spent on education. A great deal. So your education, and we're going to actually recommend that you might consider putting your resume, your education at the top of your resume, because you're selling your degree. And you want them to see that quickly. But again, they look at dates, they look at past titles, they look at your education. So what do you do to make the reader want to see more? You target it. Again, targeting. Put the key skills in there. Put the key knowledge that you have in there. And by all means, put the key words that they're looking for. A way to also get them to stop scanning and to start reading is to lead your resume with the things that they want most. So again, you're going to write your resume from the employer's perspective. You're going to look at what does this job description say? And the first bullet on the resume should be the most important thing they're seeking. What do you have that's important to them? And so reflect that. Again, take your experience, show the impact that you can give them by the experience and the things that you've already done. What I also want you to do is to brand yourself. The Bugatti brand, even for those of you who were familiar with the car, as soon as that EB appeared on that video, I saw some people going, yeah. Because it's a brand. And you can brand yourself with the things that you display. And you become the brand that they want to buy in the process of writing your resume. Now let me show you how to brand. I'm a tie collector. And I have this tie. It's an interesting tie because it will basically go with almost any shirt. So when I put a aqua shirt, the little aqua dots jump out. When I do the red shirt, the red pattern of it shows up. Go over here to the beige, and you see the beige. There we go. We do have a light. So, just the colors are reflected by the pattern in the tie. And the tie is a lot like your resume. It's fixed at any time. And so what you want to do when you display your resume is to show the aqua in your resume against the aqua of the job. So if I'm after the red job, I make the red my highlight. And I can leave off the other things. They're not necessary. This is a tool that you might consider using to prepare your resume and to address this. It's kind of an interesting tool. It's just a matrix. And so you take basically every job that you've ever had, you talk about the responsibilities of the job, you put down what actions you took to fulfill that responsibility, you write something about the results, and then you list the skills that were involved in executing that responsibility. And when you get ready to interview or to write your resume, you say which of these responsibilities and which of these actions best display for this job. So if I'm applying for a job as a sales leader, and this is my resume, I may put this as bullet number 1. So bullet number 1 is I hired and trained a team. And if there's nothing about marketing plans in the job, I leave that off. It's not necessary. It's irrelevant. Bullet number 1, and I'm the reader, and I say, oh, we're hiring a team manager. And wow, this is a team manager, and the first thing that I saw is, let me read number 2. If the thing that I want as a recruiter is buried down here, number 3, I read number 1, I say, well, and I may not get in my scan to bullet number 3, which is the one that they wanted. So always lead with the most important bullet to the reader and leave out the irrelevance. Another thing about this matrix is it'll help you as you get ready to interview. Because you're going to be asked, do you remember, some of you have had NCOM, but we use a thing called the STAR story. Anyway, you talk about the position. So what was I responsible for? The next thing that you talk about in the interview process is what actions did I take? And finally, what was the result? And this has now not only helped you prepare your resume, but it's helped you get ready for the interview. And behavioral interviews, we listen. What was the purpose? What action did I take? And what was the result? And you've helped yourself prepare for the interview. All right, let's go to number 3. The appearance attracts, the content holds. Resumes should have some white space. Resumes generally are 1 page for college students, but don't get it there by shrinking the font too small. Many of the recruiters are older like me, and they need glasses to read that fine font. Eliminate things rather than do that. Don't use unusual or exotic fonts. This is Chiller, and it drips blood. I actually had a student use Chiller once because he was writing to the Rocky Horror Picture Show company. Thought that would match. They wrote back and said, could you send us your resume? It looks pretty good, but in a readable format. So, be professional. You don't want to stand out because you're unusual. You want to stand out because you're skilled, because you match the skills. You target the reader. Again, we've talked about that. You communicate clearly. You communicate concisely. 3 things to remember. Oops. Be consistent all the way through the resume. Abbreviations, formatting, be consistent there. Exercise restraint. Don't use multiple fonts. You can use 2, but don't go to 3 or 4. It looks like you cut and pasted this and forgot to make it the same. Don't use all caps. Don't use bright colored paper. Bright colored paper, every year I have somebody who writes on bright pink or bright green, and they say, well, I wanted to stand out. Unfortunately, you stand out negatively. Then limit the length to 1 page. Here's an example of just a resume with consistency. Notice that all those things are consistent. Don't use the green color. Eliminate that. This is a multiple font resume, and it also shows the missionary experience down here. We'll talk in just a minute about that. Keep it consistent, keep it professional, make it look good. Address concern, if you're sending your resume to a Craigslist job posting, be careful. We just want to protect you from identity theft. If it's going to something on the bridge, you can leave it there. Consider providing just a minimal, again, check with career services if you have any doubts about a job. Objectives, I told you I'm not a fan of objectives. This is too generic. It's a bad objective. It doesn't tell me anything that everybody else doesn't want. What I need you to be is a fast match to my job, not a generalist, because I'm not hiring jack of all trades, I'm hiring specifics to a job. You can use an objective, but it needs to be very specific. Again, I'm going to let you guys look at this online. Summaries are used a lot in professional resume writing today, but the summary is just, it really needs to be good in order to sell you. I keep it low. Use computer skills. The education section, normally your highest degree first. It is a Bachelor of Science, not a bachelor's. You have a bachelor's degree, but it has an apostrophe, unless you have two. Graduation date, you can show it, don't need to put in